Satnam, everyone. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to today's class episode in the roots of Sikh Dharma. And this is the first episode, and we're calling this an overview of Sikh Dharma. So those of you who are new to Sikh Dharma, I hope that this program will give you a lot of basic information. This is going to be a series of classes and discussions going through various topics related to understanding the essence of what we call Sikh Dharma, Sikhism. So we're going to talk about all those terms and talk about a lot of different things throughout the session. So welcome to those of you who have already come on. Please say hi by putting your name and perhaps where you're logged in from in the comments section. I can see those, and that'll be great. Judith and Deva Hardeep, Mohan Sangeet, Kiran Deep, all of you, welcome. And so I'm going to launch into this presentation now. And just know that if you have questions along the way, please don't hesitate to put those questions right into the comments. And then I can pause. And even if I've gone on to another part of this topic area, if there's still something that you are questioning, just go ahead and put it in, even if we've moved beyond that, and I'll go back to it because I want to be sure that I address each of these questions that you might have as we go through it and not leave them necessarily all to the end, but I'm going to try to leave some time at the end of the program too, so that questions can be discussed thoroughly. And I'm saying hi to Flory and Tracy, who have joined us. So let me just launch into the program, and I'm going to bring up PowerPoint here. I'm going to hide the banner just briefly. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. So now some of that may be a little small for you to read, but I'm going to go through each slide, read what it says, and then also talk about the contents that are in the slide. So this is, like the homepage. And the intention of this series is understanding the philosophy and practices and the history of the Sikhs. And how can it be relevant to you in the 21st century and in the Aquarian age? So as I said, this is part one. This is the overview. And so this next slide is asking the question simply, what is Sikh Dharma? So most sources, as you can read here, attempt to define Sikhism or Sikh Dharma by what Sikhs believe. They'll tell you, Sikhs believe this, or they believe that. Or it'll tell you what Sikhs do. They do langar, they recite long sections of Gurbani every day. They'll try to reference what Sikh Dharma is by what Sikhs do or what they believe. But rather, I think it's important to start at defining what is Sikh Dharma. And it's obvious, but still, it's good to put it into words. So Sikh Dharma is a spiritual path to experience God. And, using the word God can be challenging for some people. So I want to be sure that what I mean when I say God, and for you to understand that, is the divine source of the universe, or the divine consciousness, the divine light, the universal, infinite light. So many words that we can use to describe what we otherwise call God. And I want to be sure that you understand that when I'm using that word God, I'm not talking about some image of an old white guy with a long gray beard up in the clouds. This is a more nuanced concept of God, and we're going to talk about more of that as this presentation goes on further. But also, I wanted to draw attention in this slide to how we talk about Sikh Dharma as initially as we talk, about the beliefs, the philosophy, if you will. But I want you to also understand that Sikh Dharma or Sikhism, Sikhi, is also really the body of people who practice. And there are many ways to practice. So as it says here on this slide, it is also the community of people with a shared intention to live in balance with the divine source of the universe, God, and that divine source, as defined by Guru Nanak, really is without form, without gender, without personality, holds no enmity, has no fear, and is omnipresent, meaning it is in everything and everyone, and omniconscious. In other words, that consciousness of that divine is in each of us and is in everything. So we can touch that, we can feel it, we can experience it. So before I go on to this next slide, I just want to check in. So we've got Joey and joining us as well. I think we've got 20 people on the call on this program. But so I encourage those of you who have not yet done it to please say hi. Let me know where you logged in from. And I'm seeing a lot of different places, of course, the UK, around Europe, around the United States, South America. So this is all great. And Deva Hardeep Singh, sorry. Your question about whether I'll post this PowerPoint on Sikh Dharma's website. I'm not sure I'm going to post this as a separate PowerPoint. I may just leave it embedded in this program. And of course, the recording of this program will be there. And I guess my reasoning at the moment around that is just that I'm not sure that the wording in of itself in the PowerPoint is sufficient. And by adding my commentary, I feel like I'm getting more to the heart of things and also being more inclusive of things than just the words that are on the PowerPoint pages. I hope that makes sense. All right, so let's look at this slide. And so here I'm talking about understanding these words, Sikhism versus Sikh Dharma versus Sikhi. And so this is kind of a very general definition of these words. In some people's mind, they are all the same thing. I like to distinguish them in my own referencing so that I can understand a little bit more about when I say Sikhism, I'm talking about an organized religion. When I use the word Sikhi or even Sikh Dharma, I'm talking about more inclusive, but without the hierarchy of governance, if that makes sense to you. So let's go through this. So in the first statement there, I say the term Sikhism applies most appropriately to the organized body of people who follow the teachings of Guru Nanak through Guru Gobind Singh and recognize the authority of the political governance, meaning the material governance body in the Punjab in India that is called Shiromani Gurdwara Parbandhak Committee. Most people say SGPC. So that is more of the organized religion part of what we're talking about. And then the term Sikh Dharma is really more referencing um, Westerners, people who have not grown up or were born into Punjabi families, but rather were of Western descent who have adopted um, Sikh Dharma as a way of life, or perhaps they are just living some aspects of the path of a Sikh. Not necessarily do they even tie a turban. And I want to be sure that we understand that in Sikhism, the form is an identifier. The turban, for instance, is a very important identifier. But as we move down this list, the inclusiveness of the word means that form isn't the only way that people define themselves in these groups. So we go on to the term Sikhi or Sikhpant even. And these are words that refer really mostly to the group of people around the world who practice the path of a Sikh. And when we use the word Sikhi, we really refer to many people who may not be normally thought of as being parts of Sikhism as defined in modern day political terms. In Sikhi, we see people who um, may have had a turban at one point, may have grown their hair, and now choose not to do those things. Or we have people who are perhaps like some of the earlier connections to Sikhi, the Rababis. These are musicians, mostly Muslims, who served the courts as musicians in the time of the gurus, playing music to accompany the singing of the Gurbani, but they were not Sikhs per se, but they knew a lot about Sikhi, the teachings of the gurus, and they were very skilled musicians. There are still descendants of those people, mostly in Pakistan, but some Sikhs today don't regard those Rababis as being part of Sikhi. But I would say that there's a growing movement toward more inclusiveness to include those people, and perhaps, or certainly, including people who are Udasis, followers of Baba Siri Chand, who was the eldest son of Guru Nanak, who established a path of uh, renunciate, very strict yogic practices, although they also revered the Gurbani, the word of the gurus. And so they are still active. And so people like these people, Sindh people, who also revere Guru Nanak especially, can also be included in this concept of Sikhi. And that's what this last statement on this page is talking about. Sikhi is a term that also can be used to refer to all beliefs and practices of the Sikh path. You know, people wherever they are on the wide spectrum of people who identify as followers of Guru Nanak and the descendants of Guru Nanak. So I'm going to quickly come back and check in if we've seen any other questions. Nice to see you there, Andrea and Winnie, Leslie, Ravi, and Just Beer. Thank you for letting us know you're with us, and from Holland and Portland and Ohio. Thank you. I'm going to go to the next slide now, and be sure that you let me know if you have questions. Just post them in the comments. So this is an interesting slide that I want to spend some time with you, because this is at the essence of understanding how Sikhs understand this idea of God. And when you look up in most places online to understand what Sikhism is or what Sikhi is, people will describe the Sikh path as a monotheistic religion. But I am here to um, upgrade that thinking for you, because really, monotheism sees God as separate from the creation. You know, in Christianity, Judaism, Islam, you know, God is in heaven or elsewhere, and we are in the creation or the world, and we have to seek that connection outward to find that connection to God. And so that's what I'm saying here. Some say that Sikh Dharma is a monotheistic religion, but it can be more accurately described as a dharmic path, and we'll get into understanding the word dharmic in a minute. A dharmic path that believes in monism. So what is monism? So let's get to that, but first I'll clarify this second paragraph. Monotheism is dualistic. As I said, it believes that God is separate, that God, the essence, the essential divine source or consciousness, as being separate from the creation. And, you know, the mistake that people do make in relation to understanding Sikh path or Sikhism is that they want to compare it to other monotheistic religions so that it's easier for people to understand. So I think, you know, when somebody goes to a school and talks to students about what is Sikhism or Sikhi, they find it easier to say, well, oh, it's just like Christianity, just like Judaism. You know, it's monotheistic. We believe in just one God, and I think this is to help differentiate Sikhi from uh, Hindu beliefs, where they have a polytheistic approach to understanding the essence of God. And so I think that's underlying some of the motivation that people, you know, find it easier to put Sikhi in this area of monotheism. But as I say, really what we are on this path is we are practicers of monism. And that's the belief that the divine, yes, the essence, the one, is in all things, not somewhere else. The idea of singularity of the divine. And it's as you read and study the words of the gurus, the Gurbani, more and more you see it as a poetic understanding, grounded in the tangible experience of the divine. That we can feel that as we meditate, as we chant, as we focus on finding that deep connection to the divine, then we realize that it is in all things. It is in every moment, is in every breath, every word, every other person as well. So now let me talk a little bit about the difference between the words religion and dharma. And this comes up because people will say, well, why are you saying Sikh Dharma? You know, and why not Sikh religion? Well, there's quite an array here of ideas. I'll go through it, and then I want to talk a little more. So what the statement here says, there is an important distinction to be made between calling Sikhi a religion as opposed to calling it a dharma. There is a growing number of people who reject the idea of organized religion with its hierarchies of authority and rigid dogma. Some of these people seek to embrace freedom from any constraints on their understanding of spirituality, and others distrust the existing patriarchal power structures of most organized religions. and applying the adage that when you give absolute power to a hierarchy of authority, then it usually corrupts absolutely. So before I go into the second paragraph, I just want to, touch on this a little bit. So this is not new. I mean, there have always been people for whom organized religion um, was problematic from either of these two standpoints. One, that they wanted to feel a freedom, didn't want to be um, regulated by or imposed upon by a very rigid dogma. But then there are also more and more, I think, today, people who have a growing distrust of, the the mainstream religious organizations and the way things um, have proven to either be corrupted or hide corruption or some problem. And then finally, I want to talk about this last part. So, on the other hand, so let's understand Dharma. The concept of Dharma refers to right action or living in balance with the universal divine will or in the flow of the universe. Dharma is more than a philosophy, it is a lifestyle with practical guidelines and practices that brings one in alignment with the highest purpose of their soul. Dharma, this word Dharma, is mostly used in connection with the path of Buddhism. You'll see that a lot in any text written about understanding Buddhism. There is this concept of Buddha Dharma. It is a lifestyle, a life path, a collection of teachings that guide you along a path of right action or right living. And the last sentence, but it can also apply to any spiritual path that leads one to divine elevation through daily practices and observances. So, this is why, for me at least, and I think for a growing number of people, um, I'm not excited by aligning myself with a hierarchy of authority. I respect all the efforts done by people to preserve the integrity of what has been passed down through hundreds of years, through very challenging times, with much sacrifice. But um, I personally find it um, more approachable for many people who want to understand something about Sikhi is if the focus is not put on those kind of structures of governance and more the focus is put on how do you live your life from day to day? What things help to make you feel like you're connected to the divine? What practices are those? What ideas can you bring into your own understanding rather than just accept someone else's uh, imposition of something? We are stronger when we come to something through our own understanding, through our personalization of that understanding. I understand, I can feel, those kind of things. So before I go on to the next slide, I'm going to take a quick look at your questions. Oh, no questions. Well, I am hoping that you will be thinking about that because, these are hopefully things that make you just stop to think a little bit. I do hope that this material is answering some of your questions, that maybe that's why we don't see any questions in the comments area. But that's fine. If you feel like you're doing well with this material, great. Anyway, I'm going to go on now. Let's see. All right. So at the essence of understanding Sikhi, the teachings of Sikh Dharma, the teachings of Guru Nanak, it's important to understand Ik Onkar, which translates pretty directly to mean this idea of oneness. Sikhs believe that the creative force in the universe is present in every part of the universe. There is a mantra that we use to capture that, Ang Sang Vaheguru, meaning that in every part there is Vaheguru, there is God. Guru Nanak stated this in the first words of his primary composition, the Japji Sahib. It begins with the words Ik Onkar. Guru Nanak declares that there is only one, Ik, only one Onkar, the creative, the divine creator, or divine creative force in the universe. He goes on to say that the identity of that, Ik Onkar, is Sat, truth. He follows Ik Onkar with Sat Nam, meaning truth is the identity of that Ik Onkar. The concept of oneness is fundamental in Sikh cosmology. The idea is that we are all connected with each other and with all things. Within every atom of everything, there exists an essence that is shared as it connects everything to the universal divine consciousness or God. That divine light is not separate, but rather it is imbued within every part of the universe. We each are the embodiment of that divine light. We see all things as being part of us. In every other, we see the essence of ourself. So obviously, this is an important foundational teaching that Guru Nanak laid out in that primary composition that many Sikhs recite in the morning every day. And it is a beautiful companion to life, to have Japji in your life, and to be reminded each day of these essential truths that Guru Nanak shared with us. And at a time in our world where there's so much division and animosity between people, if you can just connect to this concept that we are all one, it's so powerful to, from there, we can step into understanding, acceptance, forgiveness, all of those qualities, all of those virtues. From this launching pad of oneness, Guru Nanak started a whole movement that has gone on for over 500 years. So before I go to the next slide, all right, so we have some questions. Tracy has a question. And she says, how did Guru Nanak come to these conclusions? Thank you, Tracy. So we're going to look into Guru Nanak's life in a subsequent episode of this series in one of the history sections. But I will tell you that Guru Nanak was a very enlightened soul. He, even as a child, he was very inquisitive and very determined to understand the cosmos very deeply. And so he, living in medieval India, would be exposed to traveling sadhus, yogis, mystics that might come near his village, and they would sing or they would recite prayers, and the villagers would feed them. And so Guru Nanak was exposed to a lot of different ideas. And he was very devout in his own determination to go inward and he was very regular in his meditative practice. So he experienced an enlightenment at about age 30. And from there on, he was very dedicated to the path of spreading the word of this Ikongar, the oneness, and that we are one. His he is sometimes quoted as saying that as he came out of that experience of divine enlightenment, that all he could say was Nako Hindu, Nako Muslim, meaning that there is no Hindu and there is no Muslim, because those are the main divisions between people at that time in India. And he was saying, we are one. There is no need for separation. There is one essential divine that is flowing through everything. And so we don't need to make these separations. So I think that's how Guru Nanak got there, although I'm sure my telling of that was very streamlined compared to what you can read. There's a lot of content available about Guru Nanak. So please feel free to peruse that on your own. And then we have a question from Leslie. I guess oh, I'm sorry, I'm missing some questions here. Let's see. Let's go back up to here. Sorry. Deva Hardeep is asking, oh, your comment. Thank you, Deva Hardeep. Yes, that actually when Guru Nanak wrote this Ik Onkar, he didn't use the word for number one. He used the numeral one. And so that, as you see in the illustration of the sign there on this page, that first symbol in black is the number one. It's not the word one. It's ik, and then onkar is that symbol that comes next. And that, I think, is very good that, Guru Nanak was so determined that we understand this in the simplest way that he gave it to us just as a numeral, just one. Ik, there is just one. It was beautiful. I hope that's what you meant when you put that there, Deva Hardeep. Okay. And let's see Tracy's question. And what was the time period? Yeah, so we're going to get into all that kind of thing in just a little bit here. Yeah, around the 1500s. We're going to get more specific in a minute. And then let's see. Now we're at Leslie's question. And how are Western Sikhs seen by Eastern Sikhs, since Yogi Bhajan's choices are both aligned with these? Yeah. Okay. So, I'm a Western Sikh, so I can't speak for Eastern Sikhs. But I can tell you that I have many good friends who are of Punjabi origin who embrace people like myself who have stepped into living as Sikhs, because there have always been people from other traditions stepping into or stepping onto the path of Sikhi. In fact, because Sikhs do not, Guru Nanak taught not to follow the caste system, not to separate or prioritize people by any kind of system, but based on this idea of oneness, that all people are the same, all people are equal. So then some people moved from, say, Hinduism into being a Sikh because they were attracted by that particular idea, and other things, of course, as well. So I think that the acceptance of Sikhs from any origin, whether they are newly converted Westerners or from long-standing Punjabi families, we are judged in the moment, and I think that's more important to understand how we be with each other rather than from where we came. So, great. All right. Well, let me go on with the next presentation. And your questions are great, so keep them coming. Let's see here. Okay. So now we're going to talk a little bit about Guru Nanak. So just as the waters that run through the mighty Ganges River begins as a trickle in the foothills of the Himalaya mountains, Sikh Dharma began with the birth of a spiritually inquisitive middle-class Hindu boy in 1469 in a small village near Lahore, what is now Pakistan. And he grew to be known as Guru Nanak, the first guru of the Sikhs, who led a movement of spiritual reformation based in the rejection of caste and sectarian separation. His teachings are based in oneness and embodied in his mystic poetry, or Gurbani as we call it. In his words is the promise of spiritual awakening as the individual soul of each person connects to the blazing brightness of the infinite universal soul. When I wrote this, I was in a sort of poetic frame of mind. But Guru Nanak clearly is the most important person to talk about in understanding Sikh Dharma. His, as I said, his revelation that he had when he was around 30 was very important. He soon after that revelation, he started to travel, and he traveled 5 different journeys on foot. You can imagine the conditions of traveling through medieval India at this time. So we're talking about 1500, basically, that he started traveling. And he traveled all over India, down as far as Sri Lanka in the south, and up into Nepal, and far west, at least as far as Mecca, that we know for sure. And some historians believe that he may have even traveled further, perhaps to Rome. So he did all of this, as I say, mostly on foot. As he would go, he would share his knowledge, and I'm sure he would also pick up knowledge along the way. And I recently was enlightened by reading a book that was an account of an Islamic historian who lived in Mecca at the time in Baghdad, at the time that Guru Nanak lived. And he described spending time with Guru Nanak. And Guru Nanak would come to a village and he would have a following with him, people coming along with him, supporters, musicians, his longtime companion, Mardana, who was a Muslim Rababi musician. And so they would encamp, and they would every evening have a program where Guru Nanak would share his teachings, his compositions in musical form, and then they would share food and discourse. And he would stay there for weeks, and then perhaps he'd get an invitation from a nearby village, and then he would move along to that location. And in that way, he covered well over 40,000 miles over the course of 27 years. And as I say, 5 different journeys. So he would come home in between for a rest or for connecting to family, and then head out again. And this is all, there's a lot of documentation you can find online or in books about his journeys, where he went. And uh, I can't help but feel like it really shaped him as a teacher, as a guru, as a human being, uh, learning as he walked and sharing and growing. So it was an amazing thing that this human being did. After he came back from those 5 journeys, he settled in one area and established a community, people around him wanting to understand his teachings and learn from him and practice. And that grew into quite a big community. And then what happens next is that after Guru Nanak passes away, then the light of his consciousness passed into a dedicated follower of his, who became known as Guru Angad. And Guru Angad was the second guru. That image there shows all the 10 living gurus. It also, I think, has a picture of the Siddhi Guru Granth Sahib, but we'll get to that. And so these were the chain of evolution or continuance that the light of Guru Nanak continued through. So let's see, there were 8 more living gurus who embodied the same spiritual light. And each of these gurus exemplified the values taught by Guru Nanak. They also demonstrated strong virtues of courage, compassion, and grace. Each of them sort of added something, a nuanced approach to an earlier teaching, or bringing forth something new in the teachings. So the writings of Guru Nanak, Guru Angad, Guru Amar Das, the first 5 gurus are included in the Siddhi Guru Granth Sahib that we're going to talk about in a minute, because they were compiled by the 5th guru, Guru Arjan. And then later, the 10th guru added the compositions written by his father, the 9th guru, into what now we call the Siddhi Guru Granth Sahib. So as the 10th guru, Guru Gobind Singh prepared to leave his body. He knew his death was coming. And he said that the divine light of Guru Nanak would no longer move to another human form, but rather he decreed that the Guru would henceforth be embodied in the Siddhi Guru Granth Sahib, the accumulated writings of the Gurus who had writings, and also some enlightened writers, saints from other traditions, like Namdev, Kabir, and others. There are 30 other writers, 6 gurus and 30 other writers that have their writings in the Siddhi Guru Granth Sahib. And this embodiment of wisdom is now revered by all Sikhs to be the living guru. This form of the guru is called Shabad Guru, as it is based in the Shabad. Shabad means word. When these sacred words are read aloud, they literally manifest the presence of this Shabad Guru. This universal teaching guide this universal teaching guides and informs the intention and direction of Sikhs everywhere. Each day in Sikh temples around the world, the Siddhi Guru Granth Sahib is opened and opened at a random place, and a reading is read aloud that is meant to inform and guide on that particular day. So, for instance, on websites now, you can find a link that will give you that reading that was taken. It's called a hukam. That reading from the most revered temple for Sikhs in the world at the Hari Mandir Sahib, or Golden Temple in Amritsar. And so many Sikhs will read that and be inspired or guided in their daily actions from that. Let's see, we got any questions emerged. Okay, we're doing good. So keep putting your questions there if you have anything else. And so Sikhs have emigrated from India across the earth and are now known in every country. Throughout history in India, non Sikhs have converted to Sikhi. And recently, people in the Western countries, not born into families of Punjabi heritage, have also been choosing to live as Sikhs. Sikh communities around the world are known for their generosity, demonstrated through the Guru Ka Langar, or Guru's Kitchen, free kitchen, serving hundreds of thousands of people every day. Hundreds of thousands. Think about that. These these communities are based around the Sikh temples known as gurdwaras. One of the fundamental practices of the Sikh path is to gather and sing or chant the words of the gurus and then share food together. And the serving of free food has become a recognized way of serving those in need, regardless of their caste, race, or religious path. And that's a pretty common picture that you're seeing there on this page, showing people sitting on the floor because the gurus wanted people to be all on the same level, no elevated status. And so the langar is free, and every gurdwara, when they have a program, they will have this Guru Ka Langar afterwards. And people from any walk of life are welcome there. When you go to visit in India at the Harimandir Sahib, the Golden Temple, you will witness tens of thousands, upwards of 50,000 people a day being served just in that one location. And on holidays, I think they serve over 100,000 people. And that's just one place. So, it's a beautiful thing that Sikhs are known for around the world. And there are Sikh organizations who have organized to go into areas of devastation from natural disaster and serve food. There are those who serve food to homeless people on a regular basis. It's a really wonderful way that Sikhs are known for their service. I know in Los Angeles, outside Los Angeles, in Riverside, there's a drive-up program where people who need food can be served food right from their car during COVID. And so they stand there and they drive up, as people drive up, and they give them some food that's already prepared and put into containers for them to take and eat. So I think that's a beautiful way that we as Sikhs are known. So I'm going to come to the end of the actual presentation today, and just leave you with the idea that this is just a beginning. And well, I'll show you. So next week, of course, will be a different program. We'll be doing Dandan Ramdas Guru chanting, and really focusing a little bit about how to make prayer more effective. So if you are called to tune into Guru Ramdas in a prayerful connection, then we will talk a little bit about that next week, as well as actually chant. So I hope to see you there for that. But other topics coming up in this particular series that we will do once a month. So the next one we'll be doing is, what do Sikhs believe? So this will be touching on cosmology, on doctrine, on philosophy established within Sikh Dharma. And then subsequent programs will be looking at what do Sikhs practice. In other words, what are the daily routines? What are the things that Sikhs do together or do individually as part of a spiritual practice? And then we'll go on to the history of Sikh gurus. And as there are 10 of them, that will easily fill up one program. And then we'll look at the history of the Sikhs after the lives of the gurus. And there's a lot of history there too, so that will be interesting. And then we're going to be looking at understanding Shabad Guru in a more detailed way, and Gurbani. And then we'll be looking at how all of this is affecting life today and how it can be relevant and helpful. So those are some of the topics that we'll be looking at. And I want to thank you all for okay, so Tracy is asking a question. What is a practical way to learn the language of the mantra? I guess that's what you're saying. So you're referring to Gurmukhi, and there are several online places that you can go to learn about Gurmukhi and how to learn to read it, because it has a different script. It is the best way to understand how to make the sounds of Gurmukhi correctly, is to actually read the actual script. In the meantime, there are a lot of resources that have transliteration. So, for instance, if you are if you like to read Japji, or you're learning to read Japji, Sahib, we have Sikh Dharma International. We have an app that's available in the usual places called Japji for the Aquarian Age app. And in that app, you can turn on the display to show Gurmukhi or transliteration or English or any, the meaning or any combination of those things. So it's very useful if you want to read along with Japji that way. There is a free audio built into the app by Narinjan Kaur of Vancouver, beautifully reciting Japji Sahib. And then if you want to pay a little something, because the app is free, but if you want to pay a little something, you could get Sanadam Kaur, her recording embedded in the app more slowly. So her reciting takes about 30 minutes. And there's another recording by Sarasat Simran Singh of Jardi Kala Datta that is faster, and that takes, I think, 22 minutes. So anyway, you have choices there. We will be offering, Basics of Sikhi is a place on YouTube that you can find videos for learning some Gurmukhi letters. We also have a program coming up soon. It's in production at the moment, that we'll be offering about learning Gurmukhi script as well. So keep your eyes out for that. And I want to thank all of you for participating today. Please like this program if you're on Facebook and share it. And these recordings of this program will be there on Facebook and also on our YouTube channel. So if people are asking if they want to know more, you can direct them to those resources. And I wish that you all stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you next Wednesday, I hope, in another program. And many blessings. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.